everybody, and welcome to the first episode of this new series of Attendance Bias. Over the next few weeks, we are going to take a look at each venue Phish is going to play on their upcoming 2025 summer tour. From old favorites like SPAC and The Mann to first-time visits for Phish like Folsom Field and Forest Hills Stadium. Today, I am joined by returning guest Chris Casey and his partner Jen, both New Hampshire natives, to give us a local view of the SNHU Arena, or the SNHU, at which Phish will open their summer tour with a 3-night run on June 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Phish doesn't have a big history at the venue, but Chris and Jenn have a long history in Manchester and New Hampshire as a whole. So what follows is a mix of a venue preview and a travelogue. I hope that you'll enjoy it, and I look forward to our previews of other venues on this summer tour. So let's join Jen and Chris to hear about the SNHU, or SNHU Arena, for June 20th, 21st, and 22nd in Manchester, New Hampshire. Chris, welcome back to Attendance Bias, and Jen, welcome to Attendance Bias. Jen, how are you doing today?
I am great. I'm excited to be here. I feel like I'm part of the team now.
You are, and you'll have to keep coming back because, Chris, this is, I believe, your third time on the podcast.
Third time. I think I've called in a couple times in some of those episodes, but this is not my long-time first time.
Right. So eventually I'll have to be like Saturday Night Live and get you a 5 Timers Club jacket.
Ooh.
That would be nice.
Yeah. Would it be like Fishman donut?
Yeah, it'd be donuts.
Pattern?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would have to. So this is, for anyone listening, Chris has previously been on Attendance Bias to talk about the entire show, classic show of November 28th, 1997 in Worcester. And he also came on for one of the first mini episodes I've ever produced where he talked about Sand from December 8th, 1999. And Chris, where was that version of Sand?
That was in the Portland Cumberland County Civic Center.
Right, the CCCC.
Yeah, it's now known as like Cross Insurance.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit, not that version of Sand, but the idea of naming rights and venues, because today we are here to talk about Phish's upcoming shows. This is a departure from the regular premise of Attendance Bias, where we are going to speak about mostly a venue, but kind of a series of shows that have not yet occurred. And those shows are on June 20th, 21st, and 22nd at the currently named SNHU Arena in Manchester, New Hampshire. Is it pronounced SNHU?
Yeah, I mean, just SNHU is what people say. So
yeah. That's been the name for it.
And previously it was the Verizon Wireless Arena. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, the last time they played there, that's what it was known as.
And in my old mind, that's still what it's called.
In my older mind, it's still the Staples parking lot from when I was in high school.
Yes.
So we'll hear about the history of that venue, Phish's last time playing there, and what it's like being a fan going to the SNHU Arena, or SNHU, whatever, we'll get used to it, going there. For those listening who are planning to attend Phish's upcoming 2025 opening run for the summer tour. Before we get to that, though, Chris, we'll start with you. What is your history in New Hampshire?
I moved to New Hampshire when I was 8 from Pennsylvania back in 1987, and I've been in New Hampshire pretty much ever since.
And Jen, how about you?
Well, I was born in Manchester, New Hampshire, and I'm like, I don't know if this is like a brag or, oh, that's sad. And I've lived in New Hampshire my entire life. So I'm going to go with it's a brag. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Live for your guy.
You went to high school in Manchester.
I did.
Yeah.
So you're the expert.
Sure. I mean, I technically grew up in the Bedford bubble, which is the next town over. And I was so excited that I got to leave the bubble to go to a Manchester high school. But now Bedford has their own high school. But anyway, yeah, Manchester. That's my alma mater.
So I wanted to ask, when Phish announced their tour, I was overseas. I was in Europe, and I was shocked, despite the rumors that were coming through, that Phish would open their tour in New Hampshire as a state. Forget about Manchester. I'm just talking about the state in general. They tend not to play north of Saratoga for the most part. And I'm sure there are fact checks that could prove me wrong about that. But they'll occasionally play at the CCCC in Maine. But even though the first part of their career, even the first, you could argue maybe 15 years of their career, they were considered a quote New England band, but they did kind of make a transition to be New York as their home base. So they're opening their summer tour in New Hampshire, of all places. Chris, what was your reaction when you saw that as a resident of New Hampshire, when you first saw those tour dates?
I was absolutely delighted with that because we had all seen the previous rumored summer tour dates. That was before spring tour was even announced. And all the spring tour dates were exactly as they were on that rumored page. So I was assuming that summer was going to be the same thing. So I believe summer was saying starting 2 nights up at the Cumberland County Civic Center in Portland, Maine. So when I saw these dates drop, the first thing I do was text Jen. I'm like, we got 3 nights at SNHU.
And I was like, what? What? I was in the middle of teaching and I got it on my watch and I went and ran to my phone and all the kids were like, what's wrong? What happened? I was like, guys, Phish is coming to Manchester. What the heck is happening? Even my kid, who's not a huge Phish fan, is like, wow, that's really cool that they're coming here. Wait, it's the opening of the tour. Yeah. So even they're kind of like, maybe we'll go.
I've never been to New Hampshire, at least that I'm aware of, maybe at least through Vermont, maybe like through an accident of the route of a highway. I've been to New Hampshire, but I've never gone there as a destination. So I have to I'll ask you to start, Jen, as a native. Moving there as an 8-year-old doesn't count. You're still a visitor, Chris. But as a native of New Hampshire, what is something that you love about New Hampshire, or even if you want to say Manchester, that you can't find anywhere else?
The first and only thing I think of is we have everything. You got White Mountains, you got the ocean, and you got Boston. So it's like wherever you want to go, you're about an hour away from where you want to be. It's got everything. And we got the 4 seasons. So I feel like I like this season change. I think that's why I've stayed here, actually.
Yeah, I'd reiterate exactly what you said. You kind of have it all. You can be at the ocean, you can be in the mountains, you can be in Boston, or you can be in one of a handful of other states within an hour or two.
The venue history of the SNHU, I don't know. It stands, for those of you listening and don't know, it stands for the Southern New Hampshire University Arena. It just sounds strange to me, so I'll just say it and I'll get used to it eventually. But according to its website, the capacity for end stage concerts is 10,050 people. And when it opened, it was known as the Manchester Civic Arena. And we discussed several times at the beginning of our conversation, the naming rights has changed several times since it was opened, which was back in 2001. So it's been here for about 24 years. Jen, do you remember when it opened?
Well, I'm like 2001. Geez, that was the year I graduated high school. So, as he said earlier, it was a parking lot. We used to skip school and go to that parking lot because it was across the river, so we wouldn't get caught. It kind of became a thing when I went off to college. So I don't really remember the opening but I do remember once the Monarchs, the hockey team, once they were there and I had kids, it was like the place to bring the kids because it was $10 and then you could buy this little rubber hockey puck and chuck it. It's called Chuck a Puck. So that was like pretty much the only thing I had been there for until we went last fall to Bill Burr. Limited experience with that arena other than knowing it's there and always looking to see who's coming through, and it's never anything I want to see.
Yeah the number of things that I'm interested in that happen there is pretty minimal because it's a lot of your Motley Crue and like your other 80s bands or like maybe the American Idol tour or something like that.
Right. I was looking into it in preparation for our conversation, and it's been the home over the years, as you mentioned, Jen, of several minor league hockey teams or collegiate sports, as well as concerts, obviously, comedians, like you mentioned, Bill Burr, and other kind of medium to large-ish scale events. So as of this conversation, in addition to Phish, upcoming events include a Rascal Flatts concert, a Monster Truck Show, Jeff Dunham is coming, and an NCAA men's hockey tournament. So my point of reference when I looked at that lineup is that it kind of serves the same purpose as where I live, the Nassau Coliseum, in that it's an all-purpose arena on the mid-range to maybe smaller size, considering the events that it books, for whatever show is passing through town for the New England market outside of Boston, like north of Boston.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to say I was looking at the stats because, like I was saying earlier, the rumored dates were Cumberland County Civic Center. And that, I believe, is only 500 people less than SNHU. So it's a very similar size.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we get the Disney on Ice stuff too. I don't know if that's
no, it's right in that wheelhouse.
And circus. When my kids were young, it was
it's right in that wheelhouse. In terms of location, it looks to be about an hour west of Portsmouth, where I imagine a lot of people listening might be familiar with in terms of New England geography. Off 93, if you're driving north, that is, from Massachusetts. It's in the very lower portion of the state, according to its name, obviously, Southern New Hampshire University, and about 40 minutes north of Lowell, Massachusetts. How far is it north of Boston?
I mean, like an hour.
Hour-ish.
Depending on traffic.
Yeah. I
drove this morning.
I drove this morning at 2:30 in the morning to drop Jen's kid off at the airport. So I left at 2:30, was back at 4:30 and back in bed and slept till 8:30.
Oh, well, good morning.
Yeah.
What is the surrounding area like? So if I'm a fan, one of the few fans that still go, quote, on tour, right? In New York, I have venues and shows that are closer to me than the New Hampshire run, even though it's not that far. But I'm coming in having never gone to the Manchester area. What is it like around the area? Is it a typical small community? Are there hotels to stay at, or is it mostly suburban sprawl with a big arena right in the middle?
I mean, it's the Queen City. Manch Vegas is the
that's
what we call it. It's
Manch Vegas.
It's been called Manch Vegas now. I want to say for like 25 years. It started as a joke. Like
I remember it early mid 90s. Yeah. It's the biggest thing happened around Manch Vegas.
So, I mean, it's obviously developed over the years. I feel like it's a mill city, so it was a hub for a while. But actually, what's interesting is I have a couple people I graduated high school with who have really started to revitalize the city and be a huge part of it. Right next to the arena was Indian Head Athletics, so now that's Shoppers Pub, but that's like a family legacy building, and graduated with that guy, Kyle York. I'll name drop. But he's now developing this whole like Queen City Center with that they're bringing Harpoon Brewery in and a bunch of other stuff, but that's like the big name. So I feel like Manchester, there's this group of people right now trying to build it up and make it a destination, which is cool to see. But as someone who grew up here, I'm a little skeptical. It's like, well, okay, all right. Like, well, let's see what happens. I'm like, Phish is coming, so that's a good start.
Or, baby steps.
Yeah.
So I've seen that a lot especially in the Midwest. My wife and I go on long Midwest baseball road trips often, and a lot of Midwestern cities, I'll cite Milwaukee or Detroit, or most recently we've been to Minneapolis. These cities that earlier in the mid 20th century or early 20th century erected these enormous factories for manufacturing or trade, and then there was the big bust right towards the 70s and 80s when a lot of business was exported to other countries. And now in the early 21st century, small businesses like breweries or say, restaurants or boutique hotels are taking over these enormous, well-built spaces and just kind of transforming them. So is that around what Manchester is trying to get a taste of?
I think, yeah, for sure. Because this Queen City Center is taking over a mill building and transforming it. So yeah, it's definitely The mills house a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of restaurants, a lot of local businesses, a lot of artists. There's actually a lot of artist studios and like musician space. So I feel like there's this artsy part of Manchester that's wanting to come out. We've noticed, I mean, in the last probably 5 to 7 years, a lot of murals, public murals and stuff happening, like the Arms Park stairs by the river. I want to say culture showing up in Manchester that didn't really exist. It's like people are trying. I don't know.
You've seen what other cities have been able to do to revitalize themselves and make them more attractive to people living there. And I think that's where Manchester is kind of figuring out they need to go.
So where would most incoming fans stay? Those who are not from Boston or from the New Hampshire area?
I mean, there's definitely hotels around. I honestly, like, living here, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking too, like, that time of year, like, it's going to be nice out. I'm like, there's local camping places around too. Like, I know there's this awesome place in Auburn, which is like, 10 minutes over. Yeah.
There's a number of hotels that are right downtown. I've never really had to think about it because I've never had to stay there.
Right.
But yeah, there definitely are a number.
And a lot more have popped up recently too. So.
Right. And my 21-year-old self will remind anyone listening, camping for a 3-night run can get kind of rough by, I would say, after night 2. So this is the time to throw out recommendations, throw out name drop, as we said earlier, any sort of restaurants, bars, places that you would recommend to fans who will be there for June 20th, 21st, and 22nd.
So the number one stop is definitely hitting the Puritan back room. We made the chicken tenders a thing here in New Hampshire. That's like our claim to fame. So Puritan back room, chicken tenders, and mudslides is like, you got to have that when you're here in Manchester.
Not necessarily walking distance from the arena,
but like that, if you're going to be here 3 nights, make it a point to get there and go early. Obviously, they don't do reservations, and people will wait there for hours. So
a table. Yeah,
for chicken tenders.
Their food's great, and I don't know. It's just like it's like an establishment. I don't know.
Yes, it is the home of chicken tenders. You can get the regular chicken tenders. There's obviously buffalo chicken tenders, and then they do a coconut coated chicken tender, which is outstanding.
Yeah.
So switching over to Phish's history in New Hampshire, they obviously came to fame in Vermont. I don't know if I could say that accurately, but they grew up in Vermont, you could say, not the individual members, but the collective band. And New Hampshire is immediately the neighbor, right? So they've only played one show previously at this venue, and that show was October 26, 2010, which has been covered on Attendance Bias very early on in this podcast's history.
As it should be.
Right, as it should be. People were claiming, and still might, that it was the show of the year, and 2010 was a good year. It was on Attendance Bias with Dawn E.B., who was, I don't think it's still airing, but was the host of the Female Centrics podcast. So 2010 was a strong year for Phish. But before we get into that, let's look at Phish's history in the state itself. So there are a bunch of venues that pop into my head in earlier Phish history. I'll say pre-1994. That New Hampshire would come up on a lot of tapes that I would collect. Post-1994, not so much. Chris, we were talking off mic before, the Keene Theater, right? Was that the name of it that came to your mind?
The Colonial Theater in Keene. I want to say they probably were in there 8-9 times. It would be one of the regular stops on every tour. It was just local. They really liked it. They had a great response. outside of that, there was always like UNH Fieldhouse. It might be the Stone Church out in Newmarket.
The lizards would be saved, he said, if they could be enlightened by the writings of the helping friendly book. In all of Prussia, only one existed, and Wilson had declared that any person who possessed it was a crook. He said, I come from the land of darkness. He said, I come from the land of doom. He said, I come from the land of demons, from the land of the big baboon. But I'm never ever going back there, and I couldn't if I tried, cause I come from the land of lizards, and the lizards they have died, and the lizards they have died, and the lizards they have died, and the lizards they have died. The helping friendly book it seemed possessed
Maybe Portsmouth Music Hall.
Sure.
But yeah, those would be the main spots. So I really want to say probably the last time they played in New Hampshire was the UNH Fieldhouse, I'm thinking.
Before the 2010 show.
Before the 2010 show, yes.
Yeah. Right. And so since this is the SNHU, the Southern New Hampshire University Arena, is the arena itself on a college campus?
No, the campus is in
it's in
Manchester, but it's just not there. I think they were able to get that arena just out of convenience from where it was previously the Verizon Center, or whatever they were calling it.
It's funny because in preparation of this series about venue previews, the first 5 shows, or not the first 5 shows, but the first 5 venues on this tour are all associated with or on campuses of colleges. All the way through Folsom Field, right, in Boulder, Colorado. But also there's the Peterson Event Center, which is on the University of Pittsburgh campus. The Moody Center in Austin is at the University of Texas, Folsom Field. And then after Folsom Field, there's the Schottenstein Center in Columbus, which is also on the University of Ohio, the Ohio State University, I should say.
I hadn't actually thought about that. That's an interesting concept. Are we have we peaked, and are we going back to a smaller, more local venue than these major corporate venues?
It depends, because Folsom Field is not a small venue.
That is true.
Despite its location on a college campus. Going back to that previous show, October 26, 2010, the last and the only time that Phish has played this venue. Chris, I know you've told me you were not there. Jen, did you attend?
No. So should we explain my Phish history? My first Phish show was it. And the next show was whenever I went with you and Cappy. So that was what?
2022 at Great Woods.
Yep.
So you had a hiatus of your own.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So this show, well, Chris, why were you not at this 10/26/10? Explain yourself.
Just being responsible, I guess.
I was married at the time, and trying, money was a little tight and I was trying to be quote unquote responsible adult. And even though my buddy said, I'll front you the money for the ticket, which I think at the time was, I don't know, $55 or something. I was like, no, I'm gonna show some responsibility. And I stayed at home. We had people over that night, and I'm watching the live Phish update, and I'm like, oh, after midnight. Oh, I fucked up here.
Yeah, right away. You knew in the first song.
Yeah, and then it proceeded just to go on to be just an embarrassment of riches.
Yeah, that show opened with After Midnight. It included a reference to Goddard College in the middle of Alumni Blues. So is that nearby?
I mean, Goddard's up just outside the general Burlington, Vermont area.
So probably close in terms of venues that Phish would play.
Right. I think that's originally where they got Page from.
Yes. Yeah. And then Trey transferred there too, I think.
Yeah. Because you can't mail people hands.
Right. I got to hand it to you. You've got heart. So After Midnight and then Goddard College reference in the middle of Alumni Blues. The show is heavy on reggae because they covered Mellow Mood, right? The Bob Marley song. There was in Makasupa Policeman, the keyword was about smoking nugs, which was quite overt considering Trey came back and still does have this big message of sobriety and he hates drugs. He's been quoted as saying that. And they also played Night Nurse for Gregory Isaacs in memory or in tribute to him who passed away the previous day. When I listened to that show, my reflection is that it kind of harkened back to when Phish was a New England band or their earlier years compared to when they consider New York their home ground. So let me ask you to play Fortune Tellers. Do you think Phish will sell out these upcoming 3 nights at the SNHU?
I will say they will.
Yeah, I think they should.
It's summer. It's local to a lot of people. It's New England. It's on a weekend. I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Do you think this is a way to try to satiate New England fans north of Boston? Because the next closest venue in terms of distance are 3 nights at SPAC, which is quite an investment for anybody in your area. Anyone north of Boston, I would say New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine. Do you think this is a way to kind of like placate? I don't mean placate like they're little kids, but sort of satisfy them, to give them to say, we haven't forgotten about you?
I feel like it's going to be the most local of stuff. It is a home base. They want people to be there, and they're giving you 2 separate time frames in which you can plausibly make it happen if you can't make one of them. I was kind of thinking maybe it's still coming, that there was going to be some kind of festival announcement, because right now August is wide open on their calendar, so who knows, but maybe there's something coming.
What is it like inside the venue? Is it like a typical arena? Like once you walk through the doors, could you be in any arena? Or is there anything different that gives it some character, in your opinion?
I think it's just like any arena on it. I mean,
standard fare.
Yeah. Or like, okay, where have I been this year? I've been down to Worcester. I've been to, where's the other place we went, Albany. Like you could drop me in there and be like, which one am I in? So pretty typical.
Nothing special, but yeah.
And finally, any tips or suggestions for newcomers who are coming to the shows in New Hampshire other than go get chicken fingers at, what's the name of that place again?
The Puritan.
The Puritan. Okay, in Manchester. Any
Yep.
tips or suggestions for newcomers who might come in a day early or might stay a day after?
Try to check out the White Mountains and the beach. And I mean, what New Hampshire has to offer.
I'm gonna give you a pro tip right here.
That's it. That's what I'm asking about. Pro
Yeah,
tips.
let's do some pro tips. So, real close to the arena, there is also a AA baseball stadium, home of New Hampshire Fisher Cats. I looked on their calendar. They are playing at 6:30 at night, all 3 nights of the Phish run.
Mm.
And the arena doesn't have any dedicated parking. There's not like you go to your Great Woods or what have you, and you have the lot. That
Right.
doesn't exist there. It's all little, maybe some parking garages, off-street parking. There's no main place. And so with that baseball game in mind, parking is probably going to be a bit of a hassle. So just keeping that in mind.
That's the pro tip.
That's my pro tip.
Yeah, parking's probably going to be.
So get there early, support some local businesses, and have a good time.
All right, well, Jen, Chris, thank you so much for sharing your Manchester, New Hampshire specifically expertise. I feel like, I'm the Mensch Vegas. I'm sorry, forevermore from now on. But I'm the amateur coming in. So this information is useful, obviously, to me, but also to anyone who's listening. So thank you for being the inaugural guests for the tour opener. For those of you listening, just to remind you, in case you forgot, Phish is playing at the Southern New Hampshire University Arena, the SNHU, the Verizon Wireless Center, and whatever else you may want to call it in 2 years, on June 20th, 21st, and 22nd, 2025. Thank you guys so much for being a part of this, and I hope you have a good time at these shows.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Great to be here, Brian.
And that's it for today's episode, today's preview for the SNHU in Manchester, New Hampshire, and the conversation with Chris and Jen. I'd like to thank both of them for joining me today, Phish.in for the recordings used in today's episode, and the Mockingbird Foundation for everything they do to enhance children's music education in schools. If you enjoy Attendance Bias, you could please support the show by following us on social media, and you could also go to www.buymeacoffee.com/attendancebias and donating anything that you can. I hope that you enjoyed today's new series, and you'll stick around for the next episode about the Peterson Event Center in Pittsburgh, PA. Thanks again so much for listening, and I'll see you next time on Attendance Bias.